Hey guys, iKailaKai here, and today I have a pretty special video because I was able to play with the current Pirate King, Guanrong Quick. Really crazy that I was able to meet him because the only reason I was able to meet him was because my friend won this sort of retweet campaign from Guanrong himself and needed a translator. As such, I went to help him out and I was able to play a couple of games with him. I'm on Blue Purple Luffy this game, the supposed best deck of OP11, versus Guanrong's Doflamingo, the best deck for the last half a year at this point. I will point out that because Guanrong was playing with us on short notice, this isn't perfectly his list, so therefore if you see a flipped over card, that's supposed to be the 9-cost Mihawk. And also in this video, I have 2 games against him showing off 2 very different strengths. Let me know if you enjoy these games with bigger names on the channel. Make sure to subscribe if you haven't already. I'll see you at the end of the video. I decided to go first, as I assume that just because Red Purple Luffy wants to go first and Doflamingo generally wants to go first, that maybe this leader would also want to go first. Playing this deck a little bit more, I feel like maybe you want to go second, and I'll explain that a little bit more after this video. So my hand currently is really good because I'm fighting Doflamingo. Now, I have Gear second, of course, which will ramp me 1 dong, but because it's to die for has the potential to ramp me 2 dong if the opponent has 6,000 power character, and Doflamingo is known to play lots of 6,000 power characters, this actually allows me to be able to triple ramp very consistently should he play his strong move. And of course, if he doesn't play his strong move, it ends up playing something like a 5,000 power character, then he's not playing his fullest potential, so therefore I don't need to be able to pull out my full potential either. Not only this, but I also have 9-cost Sanji in my hand. Honestly, this is basically the perfect hand. It's just maybe a little bit scary if he can really start to pressure me from an early point because I don't have that much counter in my hand. Guanrong's starting hand is 2 Sengoku, 1 Perona, as well as the 2000 counter Law and the 4-cost Hancock. I will point out at the start of the video that he wasn't using the list that he normally uses because he just didn't bring a deck with him, and he said that he wouldn't run this 4-cost Law and would instead run the 4-cost Mihawk. For Guanrong, he chose to keep this hand. And of course, having the 4-cost Hancock as well as 3 1-costs is really good because it'll help you find things like 2-cost Teach, which I think could be really important in this matchup. Both of our starting hands are looking pretty good, and my goal as Luffy is to try to triple ramp, and Guanrong's goal, I think, is to be able to play 2-cost Teach and to keep hitting me at 6 or 7,000 throughout the game. He decides to play Sengoku and Perona and not Sengoku, and I think that this is just due to the fact that if he sees something really good in his top, then he can just immediately play off his leader ability and not have to play something from his hand. So he ends up taking up the 4-cost Law with 2000 counter, and I think that he didn't see a 2-cost Teach in the next 5. And not only this, but the targets, we've seen a couple of them like 4-cost Law, are not necessarily great in this early game unless, of course, I would end up playing something like the 3-cost Zorojiro. On my turn, I play Gear second because if he decides to play a 6,000 power character on the next turn, then I, of course, get the double ramp off of just 1 card in Is to Die For. As such, I decide not to use it on this turn, and I'm waiting for the next turn. Now, Doflamingo, because he has another 1-cost Sengoku, can look through another 5 cards to potentially find the 2-cost Teach. If he finds the 2-cost Teach, then he can still play the 2-cost Teach and Leader Effect to be able to play a massive board from turn 2 and be able to start putting on pressure from the next coming turns. However, looking through his targets, he doesn't have the 2-cost Teach, so instead elects to bring a 4-cost Sengoku. Now here, due to the fact that he only has 3 dong left and he didn't find his 2-cost Teach, he is going to have to blind his leader effect. I think honestly he's in a pretty unlucky spot right now, and this won't happen in every game, but I'm on a very lucky side because he doesn't even play a 4-cost. I take this, and I actually trigger out another ramp card, which means that now on this turn, I don't need to get the double ramp, I just need to ramp once to be able to be at 10 dong next turn. So I'm having an exceptional game, and Guanrong is having a really unlucky game right now. Now on this turn, I start the turn with 7 dong, so if I can ramp 1 dong off of the It's to Die For event, then I'll have 5, so then I can end up playing my 5-cost Luffy to be able to lock down the board while he's trying to kill me. Now, if I can successfully do this every game, then this deck would just be tier 0. But because this deck can't necessarily do this every single game, then that's where you start to find some weaknesses. Most of the time, I can only ramp once when I'm going first, and if I only ramp once when I'm going first, then I end up needing to play an 8-cost next turn. And if I don't have an 8-cost next turn, then suddenly my moves get really, really messy. Now, we talk about Guanrong having a bit of an unlucky early game, but he still does have a very powerful set of moves in, of course, the Jinbei Hancock. Jinbei Hancock on 6 dong still allows you to be able to use your leader effect because it puts a dong on your leader. So, by putting the cards to the top, this basically means that he's going to be hitting me for 7,000, as well as, of course, playing out a character. Now, not only is it Jinbei, which allows him to immediately make his board, which almost makes up for his weak early game, but I don't have a 1000 counter, meaning that I can't use Luffy to its full effect to be able to block and 1k. This is one issue that Blue Purple Luffy tends to have, is that he doesn't run that many cards with counter, so decks that can easily chip away at him at 6,000 or 7,000 consistently can start to become very difficult. However, as I triple ramped, I was able to get my leader effect one turn earlier than I maybe should have. And as I had the 9 Kasanji in my starting hand, if I just have a good card in my top 5, then it's a no-brainer. I just play my 2 9,000 powers or 8,000 power in the case of 8 Katakuri and start to push back. Now, though Guangwang's Doflamingo was able to stabilize after a kind of weak start, this start is actually, I think, extremely important for Doflamingo, because Blue-Purple Luffy is a deck that only becomes stronger and stronger as time goes on. Guangwang on his turn decides to play Jozu to just bounce the Luffy back to my hand, which I think is fair, but he's in a situation where the slower that the game is through playing things like Jozu, the more advantage that I can start to accrue. A lot of people are saying just play aggro into Blue Purple Luffy, and while that may be true for some decks like Bella Betty that are extremely aggressive, decks like Blue Doflamingo or even Green Purple Luffy don't quite have enough aggressive tools to be able to consistently beat Blue Purple Luffy. Now, I do think that Green Purple Luffy has a much better time against Blue Purple Luffy, but it's still not as fast as you may think due to the fact that Blue Purple Luffy, of course, ramps. Now, I don't actually remember what I end up doing here, but putting the cards to the top of your deck means one of two things. Either you really want the next card, which would either be something like 8 Kas Katakuri or 9 Kas Bomb because it's not searchable off your leader effect, or you have 9 Kas Sanji ready and you're going to play those cards anyway. I start this turn by hitting 6,000 into leader. Now, although I'm saying that I'm trying to clear the board, this 6,000 into leader actually helps me clear the board. By hitting his leader for 6,000 power, if he decides to take the attack, then I can easily hit him for 9,000 or higher twice. And of course, he doesn't want to defend these attacks, so if he doesn't defend the 6,000 power attack, then the next attacks become much, much worse to deal with. So instead of hitting his Weevil, who's already 6,000 power, for 6,000, I hit his leader for 6,000, because in this way, instead of threatening for 1,000 counter, I can threaten him for 2,000 counter. And now that he's defended the attack to his leader, I can just easily go for his board, because not only is the counter in his hand a lot smaller, but it makes my decisions a lot easier. I decide to play the 8 Kas Katakuri, and 8 Kas Katakuri's effect, of course, can make 9 Kas Bomb active, although that doesn't actually matter in this matchup, but it can matter against something like Bonnie 10 Kas Doflamingo. If he doesn't kill me very soon, I'm going to kill him, and this is the threat that I'm trying to set up. Guangwang decides to play 4 Kas Hancock and sees 2 Kas Teaches in his top 3, which sucks. But he still sees a Weevil, which is quite nice because, of course, it is a 6,000 power character. It just really sucks that he saw these Teaches so late. Hits for 7,000 to play the Weevil out to, of course, draw the 2 Cost Teach, but just essentially for counter at this point. But because I have an 8,000 power blocker, this really doesn't mean too much, because I can just block the 7,000 attack like nothing ever happened. Even this 7,000 attack from Jilza can easily be defended with a 2,000 counter, should I have it. However, the fact that I took this attack probably means that I don't have it, and I wasn't willing to use Gum Giant yet. However, I think that there is a timing that I do want to use Gum Giant if I'm just trying to cycle through my deck, because it is, although maybe not worth it from a counter perspective, countering a 7,000 attack with plus 4,000. Just being able to look through more of my deck and draw more cards can start to become much more of a problem in the late game. Now, my next leader ability, I decided to pick up the 5 Cost Nami. Now, my current thinking is that I can either play this 5 Cost Nami should the turn go in a way that I really need a blocker and the 3 draw 2 trash, but also just having 1,000 counter is really nice. I still don't know how I'm going to play out this turn because it's really going to depend on how he ends up countering out my attacks. I also saw an 8 Kas Katakuri in my top 5, and the reason why I decided to put the Nami into my hand and put the rest to the bottom so I don't draw the 8 Kas Katakuri is because in the event that I decide to play the Nami, I don't want to be drawing these counterless cards, and as I can see what cards I would be drawing into, I send them to the bottom to just make sure that I can draw more counter should I go for this more defensive play. I start this turn by hitting Weevil with 8,000 with my Katakuri, just to see if I can get some counter out of his hand, but perhaps I maybe should have just started with the same plan that I did the turn before and hitting Leader to try to pressure out more research out of his hand. I realized this in the second attack and hit his leader for 6,000, and he decides to take it. Now that he's decided to take this attack, I think I might as well just go for leader, because I can try to make it so that I don't lose the next turn, and I can try to kill him in the next coming turns. Effectively, I've reset the board state to what it was last turn, except my board is significantly stronger and his is significantly weaker. Not only this, but because I didn't have to cut that many resources the last turn, I still am holding on to very dangerous things, such as the 1 cost Gum Giant. So here's the situation now. Guangwang has 2 attackers, I have a blocker and 2 life, meaning that he does not have a way to deal with my board unless he decides to red rock my Katakuri and try to go for lethal. However, because I've shown him that I have Gum Giant, it's not possible for him to kill me on this turn. The only out that he has is to try to survive the next turn and go for lethal on the following turn. And the only way that he can realistically do this, considering that I have 2 Gum Giants as well as multiple 2Ks revealed in my hand, is to play Pudding. He decides to do this on this turn to try to get as many resources out of my hand as possible, and still be in a spot where he can potentially survive the next turn to go for lethal in the following turn. However, as Katakuri is just an absurd character, the 7,000 power hit can be defended for free with Katakuri, and as Jinbei also ends up hitting at 7,000 as well, this can also be very easily defended with a 2k counter. As such, despite playing Pudding and him getting lots of counter out of my hand, which does hurt, he's only managing to be able to get potentially 4,000 counter out of my hand in total. I decided to grab a 2,000 counter off my leader ability because I already have the answers that I need within my hand for the board, and I don't necessarily need to make my board any bigger than things like 9 Sanji because I already have 4 things on the board. This turn, once again, I threaten to go for lethal with my attacks, and if he lets these attacks through, then I can decide more easily if I really want to try to pressure him to finish the game on this turn, and if these don't go through, then I can just target his board. In this way, I just keep asking the opponent these questions to see if they have enough counter, and if they don't have enough counter, then I can choose to go for certain different plans. However, because in my hand currently, I know that I have 9-cost Mom, which is complete high roll. I won't put that past me. 3 9 Moms and also triple ramp is completely absurd. I know that regardless of how hard I go for his life, I won't die this turn because I can just go back to 3 life. As such, I don't need to make my attacks any higher than 8 or 9, I just need to bully out counter out of his hand. Now he defends this attack with 2k, 1k, 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 which makes me think he doesn't have enough cards to be able to defend. Now I'm thinking for here that this 9,000 attack for sure goes through because he just counted 2k with 3 1ks. However, he actually has the 2k, 2k, 1k, and he was trying to bluff me into trying to go for this attack. Suddenly, I'm in a spot now where I don't have lethal. He has 2 life from the 2 cards that I sent to his life through 9-cost Mom, and I only have 2 attacks. If I had some kind of random rush card, I could try to finish the game right now. But now I'm thinking, oh, I need to survive next turn right now or else I'm going to lose. And as such, I think that I need to end up changing my attacks to focus on the board just to ensure that I can't lose by just sheer number of characters on the board. I hit Weevil for 9,000 power because I know that the attack's going to go through, and I end up hitting his leader for 6,000 power, although I probably should just go to board just to make sure I don't lose. This maybe was a little bit BM. But I played the 9-cost Mom, and he realizes that there's just no way that he can win, so he ends up scooping. Now, after this game, I honestly couldn't tell how this matchup would end up going because I had an insane move, and Guanrong, of course, missed his leader ability on 4 of them, which I think was extremely important. Even if you're the best player in the world going against some random YouTuber, you're going to have these games where you just low roll and the opponent high rolls like crazy, triple ramps and 3-9 moms. Him and I both knew this, and I felt kind of bad taking the win after such a high roll. However, he asked me for a rematch with the same sides, him going second, me going first. So, in a rare instance, this is going to be game 2 in a gameplay video on my channel. And this match was a lot more interesting. I have 9-cost Sanji, 8-cost Katakuri, 2 5-cost Namis, and 1 Gear second. Now once again, I don't know what's in the air, but this is another example of an almost perfect hand, but for a completely different reason. The first hand was perfect because I could triple ramp straight into 9-cost Sanji. However, this one's perfect for the alternative game plan when you're going first, where you do 1 ramp and play 8-cost Katakuri. My first 5 turns are already lined up for me, in playing my ramp card in Gear second, 5-cost Nami the next turn, 8-cost Katakuri the turn after that, and then 9-cost Sanji to play whatever I want. Unfortunately, Guanrong's starting hand isn't really that great. He has 2 1-cost Sengokus, a Pudding, Perfume Femur, as well as the 4-cost Kikomoria. None of these cards except for the 1-cost Sengokus you really want to be playing in the early game, so it's really up to these 2 cards to be able to try to fix his early game. Going into the second game, I don't have anything to play on my 1-dome turn, but of course Guanrong with his 2 searchers is looking for pieces. Now, I'm not Guanrong, I'm not the world champion. I would have just picked up the Weevil to make sure that I have a decent turn, but he decides to pick up the Buggy. On his second search, he's probably still looking for the 2-cost Teach, but as he doesn't see it, he decides to now probably pick up the Jinbei, because I think that's the only good turn that he has next turn if he doesn't have the 2-cost Teach. He almost picks up the 4-cost Law, but he ends up picking up the Jinbei instead. Unfortunately, he still doesn't have the 2-cost Teach, so maybe it's difficult to see if this is actually Doflamingo at full power, but at least you get to see some blue-purple Luffy at almost full power. I hit for 6,000, and he counters it out. Usually if they counter this early, it probably means that they want to play the 4-cost Moria, I would imagine. Which is my current read, because I feel like most of the time Doflamingo just wants to take his first life. And as he does end up doing here, he plays Jinbei into the 4-cost Moria to try to establish his board while keeping his hand healthy. Now on this turn, I've already done my single ramp, but of course because I can't double ramp on this turn, I'm just electing to play the 5-cost Nami. I hit for 7,000, which will go through because he doesn't want to cut 2 cards, play the 5-cost Nami, to then get the absurd 3 draw, put 2 to the top or bottom. Generally, in this early game, you don't want to be putting them to the top because you're just going to end up drawing into them, but if it's the turn before the 9-cost Sanji turn, then that's when you like to put the cards on top. Otherwise, you always put it to the bottom just to be able to cycle through your deck more. Guanrong then manages to play Jinbei into Hancock leader effect, which, although isn't 2-cost Teach, is probably as good as it can possibly be up until this point without 2-cost Teach. So despite his very bad early hand, he drew all the bees that he needs, so now he seems like he's in a totally fine situation. Now, because his board's already full, I need to just make sure that I don't get run over by 6,000 power attacks. The good thing here is that because I have the 8-cost Katakuri, I can at least absorb 1 attack per turn permanently unless he red rocks me. Now, unlike the first game where I could hit his leader to try to threaten him for resources, if I hit his leader right now, he's just going to end up taking the attack and then he has more resources to defend his board. As such, I really don't want to hit his leader and I just need to focus on taking the board back so I can't do some little annoying chip damage at the opponent. I can only do this once my 9-costs start to line up. He puttings me very early on, which means that I end up losing my 9-cost Sanji, so it's going to end up being up to chance what I can do on the next turn. But thankfully, because I was able to put out the 8-cost Katakuri, I don't need to worry about this specific turn. He puttings me down to 5 cards in hand and starts hitting me multiple times throughout the game, which makes it quite difficult for me to try to stabilize because he's just immediately putting on the pressure compared to his first game. I think it's really cool because you could see how he's adapted from the first and second game, taking this game much faster. On this turn, he doesn't even use his leader effect because his board's already full and just decides to hit me with 6,000 5 times already, which for me, although my leader is 6,000 power, is just a lot to deal with because I only have 3 life. I look at the top 5 cards and I'm in a bit of a situation where I need to figure out how I'm going to end up surviving the next couple of turns. Although I might be able to take back some of the board because 8-cost Kataguri can hit and still be a blocker on the next turn, there's no guarantee that I can actually just keep surviving an onslaught of 6,000 power attacks, which is what he's aiming to do. As such, I pick up Gear second, because it's a counter event that doesn't minus my dong. I'm in a situation where I can still minus my dong on this turn, and have an extra dong up to be able to counter events, in the case that he ends up hitting me much bigger, at thresholds like 8,000 power. 6,000 power to Moria, he immediately counters it out, and right now I really just want to get rid of any attacks on the board, so I chose not to hit the Hancock, because I was thinking I have a higher chance of being able to clear the Moria by hitting it 8,000. However, he still decides to counter it out, making sure that he has a lot of attacks on the board, and I try to stabilize as best as I can with 9-cost Mom. Now going to the next turn, he still has 4 characters on the board, so if he can keep repeating what he did the last turn over and over again, as he's starting to do here, then it can start to become really difficult for me. Because he putting to me my hand's already very thin, he decides to hit me at 8,000 here, which is why I'm very thankful that I had the Gear second, because I can just use it for plus 3,000 for only 1 card in hand, and still kind of tried to stabilize. However, him hitting me at 8,000 over and over again starts to become a bit problematic, and you'll see the reason why now. He thinks that I'm going to do block and 1k, but I have 5 cards in hand and 0 counter, which means I've probably lost this game already. Going into my next turn, however, I'm thinking about scooping just because I don't want to waste his time because he's the best in the world, but I decided to play it out because I see a decent top 5. I pick up a 2,000 counter off of my leader effect, and then the draw is also a 2,000 counter. Then I go for his board as best as possible. He decides to take the 6,000 attack, which means that this next attack is going to go through as well. Now this 9-cost swamp's really good for filtering out my hand because I have so many counterless cards in my hand that I can just turn into 1 extra life. And because I was able to look at the top 5 cards of my deck before this turn started, I know exactly what's in my life. Now, obviously I could put in a decent trigger card, but the important thing is that I can put in cards with counter. So as such, on this turn, I was able to pick up 2,000 counters from my search as well as my draw, and also, the card that I'm going to pick up for my life is also a 2,000 counter. Unfortunately, he ended up missing his leader effect, but because he has Perfume Femur in his hand, as long as I don't increase my life here, theoretically, I should be dead. However, because Perfume Femur isn't public knowledge, I put the Katakuri to the top to make sure that I draw into the next turn. In this way, if he doesn't have Perfume Femur, then the Katakuri can absorb 1 attack. Now here's the thing though, is that the public information to Guanrong is that I have a 2,000 counter as well as Gum Gum Giant, which because my leader's 6,000 power, puts me up to 12,000 counter. With Perfume Femur, he can hit me for 15,000, which means that on top of the extra cards that I've shown that I have, if I have another 4,000 counter, I can counter out of the attack. So for him now, he needs to assess how likely it is for me to have that counter. Now personally, if it was me, I probably would just swing 15 because I would imagine, well, he didn't have the counter 2 turns ago, no way he has it now, although he's shown 6,000 counter. However, because he's the best player in the world, he decides not to go for it. I know that I have enough counter to survive 15,000 to leader. So really, really interesting to see how he's playing around the cards that he doesn't even know are in my hand. He swings really big to just try to chip away at resources in my hand, and I'm just trying to save as much counter as I can in my hand. As you can see, although I had a turn where I had 5 cards with no counter in my hand against an almost full board from blue Doflamingo, it's still possible to stabilize just because of how ridiculous this deck is. Despite him putting me, my hand's much more healthy than it was before due to the fact that I've been drawing 2 cards per turn for the last 3 turns. Right now I'm debating if I should hit his board or hit his life, but I'm anticipating that if I hit his leader, I can force him to counter because I still have 10 Dong up. As such, I start my next attack with 9,000 again to leader to see how he'll end up reacting to it. 9,000 to leader, and he decides to counter it out and not block, which gives me the green light to then play 9 cost Mom to take back his board to ensure that I won't die the next turn. Yes, I was able to draw 3 9-cost bombs again, but this leader, because it can look through the top 5 cards of your deck every single turn once you hit 10 dong, it's really not that inconsistent to be able to find these cards. As such, the power of this deck is just inevitable. And now suddenly, I'm in a situation where I have an absurd number of counter in my hand, a full board of 8,000, 9,000 power characters, and he does not have anything. As such, once again, he ends up folding. I recorded this on the same day that I played against Mr. Hanger, which is why my list hasn't changed since then. And as I talked about my list within that video quite in depth, I'm not going to do so within this video. In this video, I'm just going to talk about why I think that I should be going second in Doflamingo matchup and what I'm trying to do within this matchup. Now, Doflamingo is a deck that'll keep hitting you at 6 or 7,000 power continuously throughout the game, so it's not like the green-purple Luffy matchup where I can try to defend every single 6,000 power hit that comes at me. In this matchup, he will inevitably put a massive wall of characters that'll keep hitting me at 6,000 power, and what I want to do is to try to have enough resources to be able to hold on to my board until I can eventually play 8-cost Katakuri and 9-cost Mom. Now, a big strength of blue-purple Luffy is that I have a really good move going first and second, so the best thing for me to do is play in a way that's the most annoying for the opponent. One really strong thing that blue Doflamingo can do is hit at 7,000 on turn 2 and play a character. However, because my leader is 6,000 power, I only need 1 2,000 counter to be able to defend this attack. And as such, if I'm going second, I not only get the extra draw, but I also get the extra dong, which makes it so that I can get to my leader effect faster, and also, because he has 1 less dong than if he's going second, he can't spread his board as quickly. Although he can end up hitting me at a much faster stage, if he doesn't play the 2-cost Teach on turn 2, then he can't easily spread out his board very quickly from the next turn. As such, in this matchup, what I'm trying to do is set up a situation where I can play 8-cost Katakuri and stabilize. Once I can stabilize, then if I can put in things like 9-cost Mom and be able to weave and counter through things like Gum Gum Giant when I have the extra dong, then I can effectively defend 4 attacks every single turn at 0 hand cost. The way that I do this, of course, is the 1 card that I get from my leader effect, 1 card that I get from my draw, 1 free block from 8-cost Katakuri, and the Gum Gum Giant, which of course is a plus or minus 0. If I can manage to get these 4 things going at a certain point, then as long as he doesn't hit me at more than 4 times, or an attack that's too big for me to manage through things like Perfume Femur, I can always permanently defend his attacks. This is what makes Blue Purple Luffy so powerful, and I hope that this video helped demonstrate that through especially the second game. If you guys enjoyed this video, make sure to subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye bye.